I was still holding the invitation envelope when the silence on the other end of the line turned final. It had been 3 seconds, then 5, then 10, and finally a sigh sharp, clipped unmistakably hers. A backyard Lena. That's not a real wedding. That's a garden party for people who gave up. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't ask me if I was happy. She just hung up. That's the part I think about the most, not the insult, not even the judgment. It was the absence of curiosity, the absence of care. She didn't ask who I was marrying, why we chose this, what it meant to us. Just one detail backyard, and she decided she wouldn't be there. I sat on our porch for a long time afterward, the evening air curling around my sweater sleeves like a second skin. The phone stayed in my hand long after the screen went dark. Malik came out after a while, 2 mugs in hand, quiet as ever. He handed me one and sat beside me without asking. I remember the steam drifting up like a soft wall between us. When I finally said she's not coming, he just nodded. When I added, because it's in the backyard, he whispered, then it's already perfect. That's when I knew this wedding wasn't just going to be different. It was going to be mine, even if it meant doing it without the woman who gave me life. Have you ever had someone skip the most important day of your life? Not because they couldn't come, but because they didn't approve. If you have, leave a comment with your time and location. I read every single one. And if you believe small doesn't mean less and love doesn't need a ballroom to be real, make sure you subscribe, and share this story. It wasn't the first time I felt small in her eyes. It wasn't even the worst. That honor goes to Rachel's wedding. My sister's wedding was the kind of event you whispered about in country clubs and wrote about in holiday newsletters. Everything glimmered. Her dress was hand-beaded Italian silk. The venue was a lakeside estate with horses that trotted behind the ceremony just in time for the vows. The guests had monogrammed welcome bags. The napkins were imported. The photographer had worked with celebrities. And me, I wasn't a bridesmaid. I wasn't even in the front rows. I was behind the floral archway with a clipboard and a crackling walkie-talkie, making sure the crab cakes didn't run out and the violinist didn't come in early. I wore clearance bin flats that gave me blisters before the first dance. I remember wiping down the cake table and hearing someone ask, "Is she with the catering staff?" Someone later tagged me in a blurry side profile photo, me bent over a tray of Flute's hair pinned back invisible in every way that mattered. The caption behind the scenes? I didn't correct it. It wasn't wrong. That weekend, Mom kept talking about how regal Rachel looked. Like a princess, she whispered as she adjusted the hem of her veil. You'll get your turn someday, Lena. But that turn never came. What I got instead were tasks. Be useful, be quiet, be out of the frame. I used to think maybe I'd misunderstood her standards, that someday, if I did things right, if I looked the part, earned the role, I'd be in the photo too. That day never came. What came was clarity. I was never the daughter she imagined standing beside, just the one expected to hold the clipboard. By the time Malik and I got engaged, I already knew the kind of wedding I didn't want. No grand ballroom, no plated entrees served with sterile precision, no 15-person bridal party in matching chiffon. What I wanted couldn't be bought in glossy brochures or planned with Pinterest boards. I wanted something real, something we built, quite literally, with our own hands. It started with the lights. I'd seen a photo once, glass bottles hanging from tree branches, each glowing with a soft flicker, and I couldn't let the image go. So we started collecting bottles one by one from neighbors' friends, even the recycling center. Then came the wiring. Tiny LED bulbs, hundreds of them hand-threaded and tested. Malik learned to solder just to help me. Every night after work, we'd sit on the floor, untangling wires and laughing about how we were building starlight. Next came the garden. Our backyard wasn't much, a sloped patch of earth, a stubborn walnut tree, and wild grass that grew where it pleased. But we dug into it anyway. We turned the soil. We planted wildflower seeds in curved beds. We carried mulch by the bag full and laid stones for a path. By midsummer, color had returned to the earth. We invited only 25 guests. No second cousins, no work acquaintances, just the people who mattered, the ones who showed up when we were sick, the ones who remembered our anniversaries, the ones who never asked why we weren't doing something bigger. When I told my mom the plan, she didn't ask why we chose it. She just scoffed. "You're not doing it? Potluck style, are you?" She didn't wait for my answer, but I didn't flinch. Because I wasn't planning a wedding to impress her, I was building one that honored us. And for the first time, I didn't need permission to make it beautiful. The morning of the wedding, the sky was the kind of soft gray that makes every color stand up straighter. Not gloomy, just quiet, like the world was holding its breath. I stood barefoot on the back porch, still in my robe, a mug of tea cooling in my hands. The chairs, 25 of them mismatched and borrowed, were lined up neatly across the lawn, each tied with a ribbon cut from old fabric swatches. Some had frayed edges, a few had crooked bows, but they were honest, and they were ours. Malik's cousin was already setting the table. A long wooden slab Malik had refinished himself, now draped with linen and scattered with little name cards. Nothing fancy, just plantable paper printed with each guest's name and a flower seed embedded in the fibers. A reminder to take something living home. Inside, Claire was steaming my dress. She'd sewn it herself over weeks of late nights and soft curse words. It was cream, not white, with a simple neckline and my favorite detail pockets. When I slipped it on, it didn't feel like a costume. It felt like an extension of me, soft but grounded, intentional. There was no officiant, no order of ceremony, just the two of us and the words we'd written in quiet hours between cooking dinner and folding laundry. Our aisle was the curved garden path we'd planted ourselves, the backdrop, a vine-covered fence, and flickering lanterns swaying in the wind. I don't remember exactly what Malik said. I just remember how he said it, his voice catching hands trembling like he was anchoring himself to the moment with every syllable. I spoke too quickly, too softly, but it didn't matter. He heard me. When we kissed, people didn't clap politely. They roared. It was joy unfiltered. And for the first time in a long time, I felt seen not by a crowd, but by someone who knew the work behind the wonder. We hadn't planned to share the wedding video. Devin, our friend from college, had offered to film the day not as a favor, but as a gift. She wasn't a wedding videographer. She was a documentarian. I want to shoot it like memory, she said, not marketing. And that's exactly what she did. No sweeping drone shots, no slow-motion twirls or choreographed dances, just the rustle of linen napkins, the creak of wooden chairs, Malik brushing a strand of hair from my cheek. She captured the way my hands trembled as I tied the final ribbon around a jar of rosemary, the way Malik's voice cracked when he whispered, "I've never felt so sure." It was quiet, raw, unpolished in the most beautiful way. 2 weeks later, she sent us a shortcut just 90 seconds long. No narration, no captions, just music and motion. I watched it alone the first time, curled on our couch, fingers curled around a cup of tea gone cold. The final frame, us dancing barefoot on the flagstone's paper lanterns, swaying above like stars pretending to be close, made me cry. When I showed it to Malik, he didn't say anything until the last note faded. Then he leaned back, exhaled deeply, and whispered, "She made it feel like something ancient." And then, almost without thinking, I posted it. No hashtags, no announcement, just a caption: October 8th, home, love. By morning, it had 20,000 views. By lunchtime, 50,000. By evening, a writer from an indie wedding blog had messaged, "Is this your wedding? Can we feature it?" I blinked at the message, read it twice, and realized we had done something rare, something real, and the world somehow saw it. For the first time, I wasn't invisible. The first message didn't come from her. It came from Rachel. She left a voicemail, voice laced with half curiosity, half accusation. "Wow," she said. "So, why didn't you tell us it was going to look like that?" As if a prettier version of the same day would have made it more acceptable to be absent. Then a text from my aunt. "That wedding video is all over my feed. I didn't know it was yours. Gorgeous." And finally, my mother. No call, just a single text. "Is this the wedding I wasn't invited to?" I stared at the screen for a long time. She had been invited. I'd mailed a lavender-embossed, silk thread-tied card weeks before. I'd printed her name with trembling fingers and even added a handwritten note, I hope you'll come. She never RSVP'd, never asked why we chose the backyard, never followed up, just vanished into silence. Now, here she was angry, not because she missed a moment, but because people saw it, because her absence was visible. She followed up the next morning. "You made us look terrible, Lena. People keep asking why we weren't there. You could have warned us." Warned them. I read the message 3 times, the weight of it pressing in. She wasn't hurt. She was humiliated. The shame wasn't about missing my vows. It was about missing the optics. I didn't respond. Not at first. What was there to say to someone who felt more betrayed by a video than by her own decision to stay home? 3 days passed. Then Malik watched the film again, glass of wine in hand, eyes a little glossier this time. When it ended, he turned to me and said gently, "You should let her see it. Not because she deserves it, but because she clearly doesn't understand what she missed." I nodded. I wasn't sure if I was ready for her reaction, but I knew this much: I wasn't going to explain it with words. I would let the truth speak for itself. She arrived 10 minutes late, of course. Pearls at her neck hair perfectly set that same faint scent of gardenia she'd worn since I was 5. When she stepped into the small screening room Devin had offered us at her studio, she looked around like she was entering a fundraiser, detached, composed, almost curious. I didn't hug her, didn't ask how she was. I just gestured to the chair opposite mine, already facing the monitor. No small talk, no pleasantries, just the soft hum of the speakers warming up and the quiet click as I hit play. For the first 5 minutes, she didn't move, arms crossed, eyes fixed. Her lips pursed just enough to suggest disapproval, but not enough to interrupt. I watched her more than the footage. She didn't react when Devin's lens captured Malik nervously wiping his palms on his pants, or when I twisted a ribbon around a jar of wildflowers. But around minute 12, when I began to read my vows, she shifted. Just slightly, like her back remembered softness. At minute 18, her throat moved, a blink that lingered too long. And when Malik, his voice cracking, said, "You make me feel like I came home," she exhaled like someone had finally let her breathe. The final frame, a wide shot of the yard at night, empty chairs, scattered candles, and us dancing slowly beneath swaying lanterns. I paused the screen. She didn't speak at first. Then with a tight swallow, she said it looked expensive. I waited. She added, "You didn't mention it would be like that." I turned voice steady. Would it have mattered? She opened her mouth, then closed it. Her silence answered for her. "I invited you." I said, not angry, just clear. "You declined." "You didn't make it clear." "I wasn't auditioning for your approval, Mom. I was getting married." She looked away, but not before I saw the flicker of something unfamiliar in her expression. Not regret, exactly. Not sadness, something quieter, maybe recognition. "You made us look like we didn't care," she whispered. I tilted my head. "Did you?" She flinched barely, but it was there. I stood and walked to the door. "Thanks for coming." She hovered for a moment in her seat, then sat back down just for a second. "I didn't know it would be beautiful," she said almost to herself. "That's the point," I replied. "You didn't care to find out." She didn't hug me when she left. I didn't expect her to. But when the door clicked shut behind her, the silence that remained didn't ache. It settled, clear and still, not closure, but clarity. After that, there was nothing. No follow-up call, no apology folded inside a greeting card, no awkward olive branch offered through holiday texts. Just silence, neat, clean. Like someone had drawn a careful border around me and labeled it, "Do not engage." Thanksgiving came and went. I didn't get an invitation, neither did Malik. We didn't ask why. Christmas was quieter than usual. My phone stayed on the counter all day untouched. No notifications blinking in the corner. Not even a recycled "Merry Christmas, Mom" like years before. No one said I was cut off, but no one reached in either. And strangely, I didn't grieve that, not in the way I thought I might. What came wasn't heartbreak. It was relief. Not the triumphant kind where you flip your hair and walk away stronger. This was different, heavier, but gentler too. It felt like settling into yourself after holding your breath for too many years. I wasn't fighting to prove my worth anymore. I wasn't editing myself down to fit into a family photo that never had room for me. Instead, I poured my energy into life, into Malik, into the small rituals of our home. We hung the wedding lanterns in our garden, permanently letting them sway like memory markers. On weekends, I'd walk the path we carved months ago now, overgrown with blooming clover and lavender, and feel an unfamiliar steadiness. The short film Devin made raw and wordless got picked up by an arts collective in Seattle. They called it Intimate Architecture and invited us to attend a gallery screening. We flew out together, just the two of us. People cried while watching it. A couple approached us afterward and asked if we were actors. "No," I said, smiling softly, "just a woman who got married in her backyard." Because that's where her life had already begun. That moment, standing beside Malik, hands laced our story, playing out in a quiet room full of strangers, was more validating than 1,000 family brunches filled with fake smiles and filtered compliments. I didn't need them to see me anymore, because I'd finally seen myself. Spring crept in like it always does, quietly, persistently. The lavender bushes we thought hadn't survived the frost began to bloom again, little bursts of purple pushing their way into the light. Life, it seemed, had its own way of returning. Then one afternoon in early April, I came home to a package on our porch. It wasn't large. Just a flat padded envelope addressed to me in handwriting I hadn't seen in years, curved careful cursive that once labeled lunchboxes and permission slips. No return address, no stickers, just my name. I didn't open it right away. I held it in my hands for a long moment, heart thudding with a rhythm I couldn't quite name. Then I sat on the edge of the bed and peeled the flap back with deliberate fingers. Inside was a photo, one I'd never seen. Rachel's wedding. There I was blurred in the background, hair pinned back, holding a silver tray of champagne flutes. My head was turned, slightly eyes focused somewhere just out of frame. I remembered that moment, the clatter of ice, the ache in my feet, the feeling of being both present and erased at the same time. But the photo wasn't what made my breath catch. It was what was written on the back. I looked right past you that day. I see you now. No signature, no date, no grand apology, just 2 lines in the same neat handwriting. I didn't call her. I didn't cry either. I just sat there holding a piece of the past I'd never expected to surface and let it be what it was, something late, but maybe not too late. I slid the photo into the back sleeve of our wedding album, right behind the image of Malik spinning me under the lanterns, both of us barefoot and glowing from the inside out. 2 photos, 2 moments. One where I was invisible, one where I was fully finally seen. People still ask about our wedding. Sometimes it's out of genuine curiosity. Where did you find those lanterns? Or who catered the food? Other times it's laced with that subtle coded tone like they're trying to find the real reason we didn't go the traditional route. But I never flinch when I answer. I tell them we got married in our backyard, that we planted wildflowers where people expected roses, that we cooked for our guests ourselves served from enamel pots and passed plates down by hand, that we danced barefoot under a canopy of lights we strung with love and wire and bruised fingers, that we didn't have a stage or speeches or seating charts, that we had birdsong, laughter, lanterns that swayed like stars that decided to stay close for one night, and that we invited everyone who mattered, even the ones who didn't show up. Because here's the truth, a wedding isn't made by who attends, it's made by who stays, by who sits with you in silence, who shows up when there's no audience, who hears your vows like prayers, not performances. When I flip through our wedding album, I don't see what's missing anymore. I don't see the empty chair where my mother might have sat. I see Malik's trembling hands, Claire's crooked seams, Devin's quiet lens. I see the face of every friend who didn't care about the venue, only about the promise. I see lanterns and love, and the version of myself I always hoped would one day step forward, whole, unshrinking, certain. And I remember that we didn't just plan a wedding, we built a beginning. And that beginning didn't need to be posted or polished or parent approved. It just needed to be true. So if someone asks me what kind of wedding we had, I'll tell them this. We had the kind where no one needed permission to be exactly who they were. And that was more than enough. If you've ever planned something meaningful, be it a wedding, a project, a promise, and someone you love chose not to show up, then this story was for you. This wasn't a tale of revenge. It wasn't about proving anyone wrong or making a statement for the cameras. It was about reclaiming something simple but profound, your right to joy. Your right to build a life that feels honest, even if it looks different from what others expected. Lena didn't throw the biggest wedding. She didn't rent a venue or wear a $1,000 dress. She didn't have the full guest list, the family photo, or the mother of the bride toast. But she had lanterns glowing in the trees. She had hands that helped eyes that saw her, and a love that chose her back fully, quietly, completely. She had a moment that was hers, and for the first time that was enough. So, if you're standing at the edge of something, marriage, motherhood, art, healing, and you're scared that it's not good enough, big enough, or approved enough, let this story be your reminder. You are not too small, and you don't need permission to begin. Now it's your turn. What time are you listening from, and where in the world are you? Have you ever had someone miss a milestone moment in your life, and how did you move forward? Drop your story in the comments. I read every single one. And if this story found you at the right moment, give it a like, share it with someone who needs it, and subscribe for more real stories that hold space for quiet strength. Because sometimes the loudest love is the one that simply shows up.